this is our 5th group coaching session. We did the 4 during the school year. The 4 this summer are going to be a little bit different because we're going to go more into the tools and things that everyone had kind of requested a little more information on. And we'll kick off with our normal disclaimer. This presentation was produced under U.S. Department of Education contract number ED/ESE 15A0015/0006 with Synergy Enterprises, Inc. The views expressed herein do not necessarily represent the positions or policies of the U.S. Department of Education. No official endorsement by the U.S. Department of Education of any product, commodity, service, or enterprise mentioned herein is intended or should be inferred. So now that that's all official, just to kind of give you a quick idea of the things we're going to talk about today. So when I was looking at some of the things that everyone had said they were interested in learning more about and going over, this kind of looked like this was our natural starting spot, was to think about, okay, as we're looking at this, what type of platform are we even using? How do we hold our meetings with our kids? And kind of start from there. And we'll also be doing some things, not in today's session, but in future sessions about non-online instruction as well, because I know that was of interest. So don't think we're not. But so we're going to go through some different things about online class meetings. We'll talk about Zoom and Google Meet in particular. Those tend to be 2 of the more popular. And then we'll also talk about Screencastify and then kind of lead into our next session. So as we're looking at this, I do have a little poll for everybody to try out, both so we can get this information, but also because I'm going to show you how you could do polls too. So you'll see, use the little scroll button. There's actually 3 questions. And you should be able to select as many as apply. So if you're using multiple platforms to meet with your students, you can select multiple. If you switch back and forth between browsers, maybe you can pick as many of these answer choices as apply, but start clicking those buttons and we'll start getting that in. And that also gives the last couple of people who were trying to join a minute to actually get into the room.
Sarah, this is Susan, I have a question.
Absolutely.
Okay, so you're talking about the students for this grant, right? Because I also do an adult class and I use different platforms for that one. It's just something
for this, it's in particular for students, but I think some of the stuff we'll go over you could definitely use with your adult classes as well.
I
haven't been teaching, but I've been using this, or other people have used this with me, and all I do is log on.
Yeah, and you can go ahead and select Zoom, Daisy, because you were wanting to learn a bit more about how to work Zoom.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, if you're not in the classroom with students, but you're using some of these things with your staff or with your team, that works as well.
For students, we use Blue Jeans. So, but I'm just going to put Google Meet because Blue Jeans isn't up there.
Yep, and I completely forgot that you use Blue Jeans, but I do know that. So, and I think you're
Blue Jeans.
Well, Susan, do you want to explain Blue Jeans? Because I'll tell you, the only time I've used Blue Jeans was not on instruction. When my mother was in the hospital, they offered Blue Jeans in the hospital so that you could use the TV in the hospital room to talk to people at home. So that's my experience with Blue Jeans, but Susan's is much more student oriented.
So in Blue Jeans, it's much like Zoom, and where you can control the what you're projecting, what you're presenting, but it is a licensed product. So like in our district, myself as well as some of the admin team and the art teacher, we have a license where we have a broader capabilities, but then the regular classified or certified teachers, they don't have the professional version. So that's the backdrop. We found that it was a little bit more stable than Zoom. And I've used several different platforms the last 13 years, and I think Blue Jeans is one of the most flexible.
Yeah,
Thank you.
all right, so we had a couple of people still joining. So I'm gonna leave the poll up for just a few more seconds for those who just hopped on. So if you just hopped on, if you wanna do the quick intro poll, there are 3 questions. Just asking about the platform that you typically use with students, or if you're not in the classroom with students, with staff. So thinking about that time of school closure when you were doing your digital instruction. And then the web browser that you typically tend to use, and where you were posting assignments. So instead of the live meeting, like in question 1, when you were just posting assignments for students to do, where might you have been doing that if you were? So go ahead and answer those 3 questions. You can select as many as apply. And then we're gonna move right along. So keep answering, because I know there's still a few people who have not had the opportunity to answer that. But while you're doing that, I'm gonna move to our next piece and start talking about that. So those who haven't answered yet, you've got about 15 more seconds, and then I'm gonna close the poll. And if you use something that wasn't one of the answer choices, feel free to put that in the chat box, because that's still great information.
Mine's frozen. It froze up, so it's not doing anything when I press submit.
Try hitting the red X up and see if maybe that'll free it.
The
Mine
red,
froze also, but it disappeared off the screen.
You know, just like in your digital classroom with your kids, you never know what's going to happen. All right, let me try ending it. And then I'll restart it for those who couldn't get it. All right. All right, see if you're able to do it now. If you already answered, you don't have to do it again, but for those who are having issue with it working, give it another whirl. While you're doing that, I'm gonna start kind of talking a little bit about the online class meetings. So when we were talking about online class meetings before, majority of folks seem to be using either the Zoom or the Google Meet. And so that's gonna be kind of our focus of online class meeting discussion today. The nice thing about these 2 options are that they're free. Of course, like with anything, they have paid options. You can always get a licensed product and get more bells and whistles and features, but both of them work really well for anything you might be doing, for the most part, for free. So we always like to look at options that are most cost effective. They can all be joined via phone. So I know many of you discussed how, you know, when your students are accessing the information, they may not be using a computer or a tablet. They may be joining via phone. So both of these work well on a mobile device. They both support being able to share your screen, so you can share any of the content that you want to there. And it works on a variety of devices. So if they have a tablet, if they have an Android phone, they have an iPhone, if they're joining from different browsers, it's still going to work. So it's not anything that needs really specific things to work. And if they don't have the ability to join, you know, with video, if maybe the Wi-Fi is not available, they can always join via phone. So they're not going to necessarily be able to then see what's on the screen, but at least they would still be able to participate. So they can always join via just the telephone. Both of these items have a chat function. So just like you're seeing in Zoom now, you know, they both have a chat function. and you can run them in your browser, or you can download their specific app. Now, I'll tell you my preference, what I find with all of them is that once you decide what you want to use regularly, if you go ahead and download it to your computer, it works better. You're able to access things easier. It tends to be than trying to do it via browser. So that's my big suggestion. You can use it in browser, but you're going to probably have less issues if you go ahead and download it to be able to use it regularly. Now, what makes them different? So we'll start with Zoom. That's what you're in right now. If you're in Zoom, you can private chat or selective chat. So what I mean by that is if you go over to chat, if everybody's able to find the chat box, you can see that when it says to, you can select either to everyone or you can select particular participants. So you're able to send those private messages. Okay. The other thing when I say selective chat is that you as the host can set it up to where if you don't want the kids talking to each other during your class in the chat box, you only want them to be able to send you messages, you can set that up too, okay? And I'll show you kind of how to set up some of these features in a bit. Zoom has polling. That's not something that, these are some features that are in Zoom only, not in the Google Meet option. So you can do polling like we just did. Speaking of which, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll for those who were trying to get in on this last option. So I'm going to give you about 10 more seconds if you were still trying to answer, and then I'm closing that. You can use feedback buttons, and I'll show you where to find those feedback buttons in general, but that's something that's specific to this. Now, recording. Recording's a little bit different for each one. With Zoom, any user can record. So like we're recording this meeting right now so that we can then share it. But if you're in Google Meet, your ability to record really depends upon whether you have it set up that way. So if you are in a school that uses G Suite for Education, whoever the administrator is for that would have to set you up to allow recording. And if they haven't done that, you can't record. If you're using a non-G Suite option, so like for myself, I'm not part of a G Suite for Education because I don't work for a specific school district, so I can't record my Google Meets. So if you're needing to record your classroom meetings or your classroom activities, then Zoom might be a little bit easier option for you. Unless you're a Google app for Education, you have that G Suite, then you just need to get with your administrator to get that set up. Now, file sharing. File sharing works differently in both of them. So in Zoom, you can file share right in here. So I can pop a file right into the chat box and all of you could then download it. With Google Meets, I can't put it in the chat box. I would need to attach it to the event in advance. So when I set up the event, I would attach my documents that I want people to have access to. And it actually attaches to the calendar invite. So a little bit different there as well. Zoom has breakout rooms, and I'll show you how to work that. That's something that's a little bit different. The other thing has to do with muting and screen sharing. So I'm the host of this meeting. If maybe one of you has a lot of background noise and you're having trouble muting yourself, I have the option. I can go over and mute you, and I can also unmute you. By the same token, if someone came into our meeting and they are not supposed to be in our meeting, I can remove them from our meeting. I don't have to ask them, do they want to leave? I can just remove them from our meeting. With Google Meets, I have those same abilities, but so do all the participants. So that means little Falula can also mute you. She can mute her classmates, and she can remove people. So most of the students aren't necessarily going to know how to do that or do it, but it's good for you to be aware that they will have that option. And then screen sharing. With Zoom, you can limit it. If you don't want students to be able to share their screens, you only want yourself as host to share your screen, then you can set it up that way, or you can leave it to default, which is where all of us can share our screens. So I could say, hey, Daisy, share your screen. And she would be able to then share her screen because that's how I have it set up. But if I don't want her to, that's an option too. In Google Meet, you can't actually set it up to where other people can't do their screen share. It's just automatic that anyone is going to be able to do that. So just some kind of different privacy things. And then the last difference is going to be in Zoom, you can set up a waiting room. So if I am concerned about who's coming into class and when they're coming into class, or if I've got back-to-back meetings on the same link, then I can actually have a waiting room where I select, let you into this meeting, person by person. Google Meet, once you click on the link, you're all going to be in there. So there's not a waiting room option. Susan?
For my adult class, I emailed them the link, but for 2 people, every time they join, I hear a little, like I'm teaching something and presenting, and then I hear a little ping. So then I go and check, and it's waiting for me to admit them. The other people, they just pop right in, but I don't know why those 2 people, what settings they have that I have to admit them. Do you know about that?
Most likely it's because they haven't actually set up a Zoom account. So,
this one is in Google Meet.
oh, this is in Google Meet. Then it's probably the same thing. They're probably joining from a non-Gmail address. And so they want to make sure you really want them. Yeah. Now, even if they're using a non-Gmail address, they can go in and set up an account. Just most people wouldn't take the time to do that because it's not really necessary. But that's why it's kind of limiting them. Yeah, good question. And yeah, as we're going along, if you have questions, pop them in the chat box or unmute and chime in. This is our more casual, that's why it's a coaching session. It's a time to ask questions and kind of work together to learn. Then the other difference with looking at Google Meet is it'll integrate really well with Google Classroom. So if you're using Google Classroom, Google Meet is already kind of built in as far as it makes it really easy to start a Google Meet straight from your classroom to share your link. You can still set it up to do the Zoom, but it does integrate really well with your Google Classroom. So sometimes that can be a little bit easier option. All right, so now that we've kind of talked about some of the similarities and differences, then we're going to actually look at how this would work. Now, some of these you'll see as I'm going through, we'll be able to do live, and I'll show you, kind of walk you through. And some of them, I had to actually record a little video because I can't show you my Zoom screen while we're here on a Zoom. That's just not a possibility. So we'll kind of be going back and forth between live and some recorded little video clips, and I'll show you how you can do something similar too. So there were some questions even about, how do I schedule a Zoom meeting? If I want to do a Zoom, how do I go about that? And you can do that from your web browser, from the app if you have the app, or you can kind of do some things within that to set stuff up in advance. So let's look at what that looks like. I'm going to stop sharing the PowerPoint so I can show you actually how this works. Okay, so we're going to go over, I'm going to share my desktop so you can see the full screen here. All right, so as we're looking at this, if I want to go ahead and schedule a meeting, I've got this window that I'm kind of moving right now. That's if I've downloaded Zoom as an app, and I've actually downloaded it onto my computer. And like I said, that's what I would suggest if you're going to use it regularly. If I'm in there, you'll see normally this says join a meeting, but I'm already in a meeting. So it's asking, hey, did you want to go back? But I can still, even with it in this, I can still schedule. And this is how you would set up a meeting in advance. You would hit schedule. It's going to default to just your Zoom meeting. So you can change that to whatever meeting you want. You can set, you want it, say, tomorrow from 3:30 to 4. If it's something, maybe a staff meeting or a class that's going to happen every week at the same time, you can make it recurring.
Sarah,
Uh-huh.
it's just showing us the sign-in page right now.
Well, that's fun.
Yeah.
I think it's showing you just my app instead of my whole desktop. One moment. Thank you. All right, let's go back. Get the whole desktop. All right, can you see the Zoom window now? Yes.
It's just the zoom.us sign in.
All right, then what we'll do is I'll go ahead and show you how to do it here on the web browser, and then I'll show you in a little video clip how to do it in the app. So if you go to the web browser, which I know that's how many of you sign into Zoom, is through the web. So you can sign in with your username and password, or if you set it up, I sign in with Google. And so I'm able to just select myself and sign in. If you manage, as you can see, I manage many email addresses for things. So make sure you're clicking who you actually want to be on Zoom that day. And it takes you into your Zoom. So you can see your profile. This is where, you know, if you've ever wondered when you aren't showing your video and it shows a picture, this is where you can change that to whatever picture you might like. But we're going to go to meetings. This is where you can see your upcoming meetings, your previous meetings. So if you want to schedule a meeting, up at the top, you'll see where it says schedule a meeting. And again, see, it's just defaulting to kind of a general title. We want our sample meeting. You can put in some description if you want. Select your date, how long you want it to be, so an hour, or maybe you only want it to be for 15 minutes. You can do that. Change, it'll default to your time zone, but you can change it to whatever you want. This is where you would set that recurring meeting, whether you want it to be recurring every day. You might have something like that, weekly, monthly, whatever the case may be. I don't want this to recur. You can require registration. For most of your students, I wouldn't check that, as it just adds an extra level of kind of difficulty for them to join. You can use an automatic meeting ID or your personal. For security purposes, it's better to say generate automatically. If you use your personal meeting ID, it's going to use the same link every time that you're using your meeting. So it makes it a little easy for people who you don't want in that particular meeting to get in. You can also require a meeting password, and you can set it to whatever you want. So if you want an easy password, set it to whatever that might be. When you say video host on and off, that's just saying when they first join the meeting, will their video already be on or off? So I like to set it to off just because then people can choose whether they want to be on camera and feel ready for that. You can enable people to be able to join by telephone and computer audio. I always leave it as both because I want people to be able to join however they might be able to. And then some of these are particularly important when you think about your students. Do you want them to be able to join the meeting before you? If you click this, that means that kids could join that link before you're on there, and they can be talking and chatting and sharing screens and all kinds of things. So, you know, for an adult meeting like this, a lot of times I might enable that, but I wouldn't necessarily enable that if I were going to have students joining. Another nice one, particularly for students, is mute participants upon entry. So when they first enter the meeting, they're on mute and they have to choose to unmute to talk, so they're not accidentally broadcasting all kinds of noise and sound. You can turn on and off that waiting room. When it says only authenticated users can join, that means they have to have an account. You can automatically record your meeting versus how I set it up today, where I had to choose when I wanted to start recording. And then I would not really mess with this additional data center thing. You can also set up alternative hosts. So if you have a teacher's aide or a co-teacher, you can set it up to where they're a host and have the same privileges as you. Then you hit save. Ta-da, I have my meeting. You see, I can add it to my different types of calendars. I have a link If I hit copy invitation, it gives me that whole thing that I can then send out to folks. I can even go ahead and start the meeting. And then when I go down, you'll notice that I can also go ahead and create polls for my meeting. So this is where if you wanted to have a poll for your class, you would set it up. And it's pretty easy. You just hit add and you give it a title. So poll for slide 10, whatever it might be. You check whether you want it to be anonymous or not. If you click anonymous, you won't know who answered what. If you don't click anonymous, you'll be able to see each person's name and what they answered on the poll. So it can be good for getting feedback on if students understood something. You can give them the poll and then you can check and see what did they answer. Put in your question here. Decide, do you want them to only be able to answer one thing? Or if you pick multiple choice, they'll be able to pick as many answer choices as they want. So like today, I kept it at multiple choice so you could pick as many tools as you might be using. And then you can put in your various answer choices. And then when you go down, you either hit add a question. So I had 3 questions in our poll today. I hit add a question until I had all 3 that I wanted. Or if you just want this one, you hit save. And you'll notice when I go to the bottom now, I've got this poll for slide 10. If I want to do another poll later, so like if I wanted to ask y'all another question later, I would just hit add and I could do another poll. So you can do multiple polls throughout your event that way. And I'll show you how you actually pull them up during your event in just a little bit. But that's how you would schedule a meeting, and that's how you would insert a poll. All right, so now that we have our meeting scheduled, you're actually going to be holding your meeting. So when we're holding our meeting, we want to think about, how's that going to work? So I want to show you how you're now going to take that poll that you did in your scheduling and how would you use that during Zoom when you actually have your students live. So let's jump back in. This one's in a little video because like I said, there's certain things I can't show you if we're live in Zoom here. And here's Zoom.
All right, you'll now see that my screen looks the same, but I all of a sudden have this new option at the bottom for polling because I have those polls set up. So when I am ready to do my poll with my audience, I click here on polling, and you'll see that my poll question automatically appears, but I haven't made it visible to my participants yet. Right now, only I can see it, so I can make sure I'm looking at the right one, everything looks okay. If I notice, oh no, one of the answer choices isn't quite right, I can click on edit. That's going to open up in a browser window so that I can quickly make that change, hit save, and then use the updated poll. Now, if I notice that I put poll question 1 and really I wanted to do poll question 2 first, I hit this little drop down box and I can go to poll 2 and launch that instead. But I really do want poll 1. So I'm going to click launch poll. When I click launch poll, you'll notice it changes and it shows the progress. So I can keep track of how long I've had it open. And as people are going ahead and answering, these numbers will start changing. You'll start seeing those percentages go up. You'll start seeing this number go up. You can wait for everyone to participate, or if you have maybe a large group, just until the majority participate. Once you have all the answers that you think you're going to get, you're going to hit end poll, and it's going to show you the results. Now again, only you can see this right now. You have to, just like you had to launch the poll to show it to the webinar participants, you have to hit share results to show it to the webinar participants. And it again turns green at the top, and they would be able to see the same results that you saw. When you're done showing that to them, when you hit stop sharing, that will take that off their screen. Then from here, maybe I accidentally ended the poll. Maybe I want to do it again. I can always relaunch it. It's going to ask, are you sure? Because if I relaunch it, it's going to cancel out all those previous answers. But if I hit yes, it'll relaunch it a second time and people can vote on that exact same thing again and repeat the process. Now, once I exit out of that, my screen just goes back to normal and I can go on with the webinar.
So that's that's how you'd be able to use the polling in your Zoom. Any questions so far? Like I said, as we're going through, just let me know if you have questions. And if you're also thinking, that's all well and good, it looks simple enough on the screen, but how am I going to remember this later? Remember, that's why we're recording this, so you can play it back and do it, play it back and do it as you're doing it yourself later. All right, let's look at our next feature. So the next thing we want to look at is how do we use some of the view options and change some of those features. So let's take a little peek.
Let's look at a few view options for when you're in a Zoom meeting. So you'll see right now that I am in a view where I can only see whoever is speaking at the moment. And it's just myself and myself on this particular webinar. So if I'd like to be able to see everyone, go to what we often refer to as the Brady Bunch view. Then I'm going to go up here and click Gallery View. Now I can see both of myself because I've joined from 2 devices. If you had multiple participants, you would see them in what you often see on our webinars, that Brady Bunch view. If I decide that I really just want to see who it is that's speaking again, I again go to that same top right corner and toggle to the speaker view. You'll notice beside it, you see this little box looking thing. If I click on that, it's going to go to full screen. So no matter the size of your screen, it's going to take up the entirety of that screen. And then if I decide that I don't want that, often I might be trying to access a browser window to look something up that's been mentioned in a webinar or to answer some sort of activity. That's fine. I can go up to that top corner and hit exit full screen, and it will go back down to a little bit easier to manipulate window. So that's one way that you can do those particular pieces. The other piece of the view that you may want to change is this new reaction button down at the bottom. So this is an easy way to get some feedback from your students right on the view. So I'm going to go to gallery view so you can see both my participants. And let's say I want to get just some quick feedback. Did everybody understand what we just talked about? I can ask them to click on this reaction button and give me a thumbs up if they understood what I meant. And notice that shows up right on my picture. And it will do that for all of your participants. It only stays up for a few seconds, maybe about 20 seconds. But they can give you either a thumbs up or a clap. So that's also a way that they can provide feedback to their peers, being able to share clap, clap. That was a great thing that you just did. So those are just a few things that you can change as far as the view of the screen.
And feel free, as we're going through, I saw Susan tried out the reaction button. Everybody can feel free to try out those reactions and put some thumbs up and things as we go along. So the next thing we're going to look at is just a general overview of some of the features that you can use with your students and how you pull them up. Because they're all going to be available to you right there in your Zoom window, but you have to know how to find them. So we'll just do a quick look at where you can find them and pull them up during your Zoom meetings.
So you were looking at my window as it would look as a meeting host. You'll notice I have a number of features here. You're already familiar with the mute and the start video options. Something that's a little bit newer is the security option. So for security, you can actually change things such as you can lock the meeting. At that point, no one is able to join. You can enable a waiting room. This is where folks who click on your link will be placed in a waiting room, and then you can select them one by one to allow them to enter your meeting. Then you can also do things like decide if you don't want any of your students to be able to share their screen, only you should be able to do that. Just uncheck that, and then that will make sure that only you can share your screen. As well as you can turn on and off the chat function, their ability to rename themselves, or their ability to unmute themselves. So if you have maybe a problem with students unmuting and making noise, maybe the younger students not understanding, you can always take away their ability to unmute themselves, and then you can select students and unmute them individually. So just a few options that are at the ready there. You're familiar with the participant area. But one thing to note when you go into the participant area, you'll notice right now I'm the only one here, but you do have some buttons here at the bottom. So you can actually have students indicate whether they agree, so yes and no. As they do that, it will actually put a little number right here beside it so that you can get a quick poll on any topic that you might want. They can also let you know that maybe you're going, a little fast. They'd like you to go a little slower or a little faster. You'll notice here under more, they can actually give you a thumbs up or thumbs down. So just another way to be able to provide some feedback. You can go here and they can do a little clap. So if there's maybe something they particularly enjoy. These two you probably won't use quite as much, but students can indicate, hey, I'm needing a break or I'm stepping away for a moment, and that they'll be back momentarily. Now, an important one is this clear all. If you use the yes, no's, or if you use maybe those thumbs up, thumbs down, and you're trying to get the numbers, then you'll want to clear it before you ask something else. So you'll hit that clear all, and that will clear those numbers. The next thing is you go along, you're familiar with the chat box. One thing you might not have experimented with in the chat box is that normally when there are other people on, this is actually a drop-down box, and you can send private messages to individual participants. So maybe you have a student who appears off task. You don't want to call them out during the actual meeting, but you can send them a private message in the chat box. You can also add a file. So if I click here, I can select a file from Dropbox, OneDrive, Google Drive, Box, or just a document that I have on my computer, and it'll place it here in the chat box, and your students can actually download that document. Another thing you can do is, set different things as far as participants can chat with. The other function, it's off right now because there hasn't been any chat, but once there is chat, you can hit save chat. So maybe there was a really great discussion going. So you were looking at my window as it was.
Oh, I think it cut off the end there.
Let's look at a few view options. If they understood that was a great thing that you just did. So those are just a few things that you can change as far as the view of the screen. So done with the Zoom and I click end, it will actually, there you go. It doesn't look like anything happened, but once I'm done with the Zoom and I click end, it will actually prompt me to pause or stop the recording. I tend to prefer to do it on. Another thing you can do is, set different things as far as participants can chat with. The other function, it's off right now because there hasn't been any chat, but once there is chat, you can hit save chat. So maybe there was a really great discussion going on in the chat box. You can actually save that as a text file. So you'll click save chat, and it'll automatically do it for you. The next thing as we go across, we'll cover share screen separately. So I want to go to record. When we go to record, you may find it valuable to record your meetings. When you want to do that, you just hit record and select whether you want to do that on your computer or the cloud. I tend to prefer to do it on my computer and then save it in my Google Drive because the videos will take up a good bit of storage. So once you click that, you'll know it's working because you see up here a little recording button, and then you know that that's happening. You also notice now I have the option to pause or stop the recording. Once I stop the recording, it doesn't look like anything happened, but once I'm done with the Zoom and I click end, it will actually prompt me to know that it is downloading my video.
Okay, so those are kind of the main features that are available to you when you're using the Zoom. Anybody have any questions so far? Everything kind of making sense? All right.
So you were looking at my window.
Now, the other thing both of the items have, and I'll show you how to do it in Google Meet as well, but is to do the screen share. So I want you to see where you'd be able to do that and how you can share different types of things.
All right, you'll notice here I have my Zoom window open because I'm in my webinar, and then I also have my web browser available because in today's class I'm going to be sharing with my students my Google Classroom, and so I want to be able to share that screen. So again, I'm going to go down to my great toolbar of things. I'm going to hit share screen. Now you'll notice when I hit share screen, I have lots of different options that pop up. Now, personally on my computer, I have multiple screens, and so you'll see I can actually bring up multiple screen options. Don't necessarily want to bring up all of that. If I choose desktop, be aware that that's going to show your entire computer screen, which means that they're going to be able to see literally anything you do on your computer. So that means if you have notifications that pop up or other things open, they'll be able to see all of that. You can also connect an iPhone or an iPad, whether it be via cable or via AirPlay, and show something off of one of your more mobile devices. Or you can select your Google browser or whatever browser you might be using. So I'm going to select that I want to share my demo class. When I do that, you'll notice you don't really see my Zoom window so much anymore. Now you're mainly seeing this screen, my browser screen, and it's actually showing up with a green box around it. The green box around it lets me know this is what my students can see. So I can really keep a good eye on what it is I'm showing them, because if I go over to another tab, it's still within that green box, so they're still going to be able to see that because they can see my entire browser. So no matter where I go, as long as it's within this, they're going to be able to see that. Now, what about when I am done sharing my screen? Okay, how do I do that? Well, you hit stop share, and it magically goes back, and you're right back where you started. The other thing that you can do under share screen is you'll notice I can share a whiteboard. So if I choose to share the whiteboard, hit share. I think I hit share. There we go. And you'll see now I've got a whiteboard here with all the annotation tools that you're used to from Zoom. And you can use it just like you would a marker board in your classroom. Again, when you're done, I just hit that red mark, and then I am back here and I am able to use everything just the way it was before. Now, if you have a document open, let's say that you have a Word document or a PowerPoint, any of those documents, it works exactly the same where you click share, and if it's open on your desktop, it will be available here to share. Now, you can get more advanced and begin going to files and pulling things from some of your online things. I find it easier just to go ahead and have that open on my desktop so I don't have to wait for things to load. You decide you don't want to share, you hit that little red X, and you're back to your regular screen.
So that's how you would share within the Zoom platform. It's very similar in the Google Meets. The last feature I want us to look at in Zoom today is the breakout rooms, because I think this is something that could be very handy with a lot of your activities and classrooms. So let's look at how you would be able to use a breakout room in Zoom. And this will be our last Zoom feature.
So from this screen, you can see what it would look like if you were the host of the meeting. And so I'm going to show you how to set up the breakout rooms. Now, right now, I don't have anyone actually on while I'm doing this recording, but however many participants you would have on, you would be able to set up here, break them into however many rooms you would like. You can manually determine who will be in there. That would be where you can actually set up which students you want in which groups. Or if you just want to break them into an even amount of 4 groups, you can have it automatically do that. And then you'll create the breakout rooms. Once you do that, you'll see that you've got however many breakout rooms you're going to have. You can rename them. So if you wanted to name that the science room, and do different topics, whatever you would like to do with that. If you decided, oh, I don't have as many kids as I thought I was going to have, you can actually delete a room. Quite easily. And then if you want to assign students, if you don't want it to be automatic, you decide you want to be able to do that, then you'd be able to click assign there and do that. So you'll see under options, you can move all the participants into the breakout rooms automatically. I would suggest that. That makes it a little bit easier. And then you can see that allow participants to return to the main session at any time. So you can decide if they can come back into that main room on their own or if they have to wait. And then you can set a time. So if you just wanted to automatically only be in the breakout rooms for 15 minutes, you can set that. It'll notify you before that time is up. Otherwise, you as the host will be able to decide when you're going to do that, and it'll give a little breakout timer for that. So those are all some options that you can set. If you decide to recreate, you can just start all over. So if you decide, I set this up totally not how I wanted, you can just start that all over. And then you can also just add a room if you need to do that. So lots of great options with breakout rooms.
All right, so we talked about the breakout rooms. You've seen how to do them, but I want you to see what it actually feels like to go into a breakout room and how you can maybe use this with your students. So I'm going to send us out to breakout rooms just for like 30 seconds. So you're not going to be there long, but you'll get to see what it would be like for a student to move into a breakout room and then move back. So your screen is going to change during this. You have not been disconnected from the webinar. You're still here. Feel free to unmute during this because you'll be in a room with randomly selected people. So use this 30 seconds to say hello. It should be telling you right now that you've been invited to join. So click to join, or it's going to send you there very shortly.
Hi, Sarah.
We're back. Just like magic. Okay, now let's try using your reaction button and give me a thumbs up with your reaction button if you saw my message that said, I'm going to close the rooms. Okay, so most people saw it. So that's another feature. That's another thing you can use in Zoom where I, as the host, can actually send a message out to all the rooms. So I could let you know, hey, fair warning, you have 5 more minutes. So maybe I've sent the kids to work on group work in their groups, and now I'm sending out, you've got 5 more minutes, and then I'm pulling you back into the classroom. You as the host can also bounce between the groups. So again, if you've got students working in groups, you can go pop into each group, see how it's going, check on them, and then move to the next one. You can also assign, if you have other teachers that you're working with, it could be that you've set up just 2 rooms and maybe one teacher's working with kids on something in one breakout room, and then you're working with the kids on something else in the other. So you have lots of options with that that might be useful when you're thinking about this online instruction with kids, or even if you're doing like professional development with your team. So just another little option there for you to try out. Now, we're going to kind of switch over. We've talked about Zoom. So if you have any Zoom questions, make sure to pop those either in the chat box or unmute and let me know. But we're also going to pop over and look at Google Meet real quick. So I'm going to pop back into our presentation because the videos are much easier when we're trying to share what in the world. Let's see. There we go. So we're going to go over and look at how to use Google Meet. So you'll see with this kind of how that works and some of the features and how to use those.
All right, so we are going to look at Google Meet. You can access Google Meet by going to meet.google.com, Googling Google Meets, or if you're already signed into your Google account, you can click on your app button, and it's one of the options there. So a couple different ways to get there. Once you're on the screen, you're going to hit Start a Meeting, since you will be hosting the meeting for your students or staff. You'll notice it's going to give you, so that way you can decide, do you want your audio on or off? Do you want your camera on or off? So we're going to go ahead and turn that off so that we can focus. And we're going to hit Join Now. You can go ahead and hit Present immediately, but I like to go ahead and join the meeting and then select to present. So as I come in, I have the option to copy the info and put that into maybe an email or automatically begin adding people. I'll show you also how to do that within the meeting. So once we are in the meeting, you can see everyone that's present right now. That's just myself. As you go across the screen, you can look at your meeting details. So again, if you need that link to share with someone, you can do that. I can turn off my microphone or on and turn on or off my camera. This middle button that looks like a phone, that's actually how you leave the meeting. So it says leave call, but that would actually be leaving the whole meeting. As you go across, they do have closed captioning available. So you'll see once I've turned that on, that the closed captioning begins appearing at the bottom of the screen. It does a pretty good job. It will be a little bit more challenging once you are speaking a native language, as it won't always know all of those words, but it is a feature that's available. I'm going to turn that off. The next thing is the Present Now button. So if I'm using the Present Now button, it gives me a few options. Do I want to show my entire screen? Keeping in mind that any pop-ups that appear for emails, text messages will show if I'm using my entire screen. I can select a particular window, which can be good for showing a PowerPoint or a Word document, or I can do a Chrome tab. If I do that, it's going to show one particular internet tab, and I'll be able to then show whatever's on there, a video, a website. So let's say that I want to do that. You see I have lots of different things open today. So I'm going to select that I want this tab, and then it's going to share just that tab. So if I wanted to then watch with my group this webinar that we did in March, then I could play that. We'd all be watching it on the same screen together. You'll notice at the top of the tab, it says I'm sharing this tab to meet.google.com. So I know exactly what I'm sharing. And when I'm done and I don't want to be sharing this anymore, I hit stop. That stops the share. And I do have to toggle back to my meeting. And now I'm back on the regular view. Now, the other piece to look at as you're looking at views, you have more options. So you have these three little buttons. If I hit those, I have a couple more things. Now, the things down here as far as help and reporting probably won't be using a lot in meeting, but things like changing layout. So you can change how everyone will be. You can do kind of that more similar sidebar screen that you might be used to from Zoom. You can spotlight to where it's just a particular person, the person who's speaking there. And then also the tile if you want to do kind of that Brady Bunch. So you can select from a few options for your screen. You can also go to full screen, maybe taking up that full window. It will toggle that for you. And then you can do the captions from here as well. You'll notice under settings, really it's not a lot of options. It's really if you need to change things for your audio or video. If you go to general, it's just whether or not you want to report issues. So not a lot of things under settings. The other thing though to really notice are the options up at the top. So this is our participant button. So you can see everyone who's on the meeting, and this is where you'd be able to invite additional participants. If I hit add people, then from here I can select from email use or put in email addresses or names and invite straight from here. The other option is the chat. So if I go to chat, then you'll notice that I'm able to use the normal chat box. So those are some of the features and functions that you'd be able to use in a Google Meets meeting.
Right, so you'll see the Google Meets really works a lot of the ways similar to Zoom. So a lot of the things are going to work just the same. The biggest difference is being there's some features such as like the polling, using some of the reaction buttons and things like that that are available in Zoom, but not necessarily in the Meet. But the basic functions really work the same way. Now, I'm going to come out of here so that we can look at how you would then schedule a Google Meet. So again, you can do that from your browser or from the app. So really works very similarly. So as I'm doing that, if I am in my browser window, let me share my browser window with you. I can go over into Google Meet, or if you're in Google Classroom from your classroom, and go into your calendar. So whether you're going into your calendar through your classroom or through your regular Google, once you're in there and you're looking at your calendar, I can see all kinds of things. I'm going to want to go across. Let's actually access also. That's how you would get to it through regular Google. You can see there as well. Very similar. But if you create a new event, you can actually add in your Google Meet straight from there. So when you're putting in your sample event, you put in your guests, so all the email addresses, or if you do have Google Classroom, then it gives you the option to just select your whole class. Okay, so I've picked my entire Google Classroom class, and then I can add my Google Meet video conferencing, and it will automatically put that link in there into that calendar invite. So then I'm going to put in my fake student of my sister and send that out. And when she gets that calendar invite, it'll already have that link in there for her to join, just the same way any of the calendar invites work when you send them out through Zoom. So very similarly, and you'll be able to click that link and join straight from your calendar invite. Now you can also invite students straight from your Google Classroom without even having to set up a calendar invite if you don't want to. There are a couple of ways to do that. I'm actually going to send that out in a separate video because there are so many ways to do that during Google Classroom that it's a little bit lengthy to show you all the ways. So if you're not using Google Classroom, I would hate for you to sit through that entire thing if that's not what you're going to be doing. So that will come separately. Now let's jump back in. Now, you may be thinking, how in the world do you make videos that are similar to this? So that's the last thing that we have today. But what I'd like to know from you, because we're right at time, is we're going to actually use, and I'll stop share so it's easier to find. If you use those yes, no buttons that we looked at earlier, let me know because we're right at time and I want to respect your time. do you want to go ahead and see how to record the videos today? Or would you like to cover that next time when we meet on June 25th? So yes, if you would prefer to stay on and go ahead and learn how to make the videos today. No, if you have something else, any reason, and you want to do the videos next time we're on. So again, for those buttons, because I know we went over a lot of things, if you click on participants at the bottom of your screen, then at the bottom of our names, you'll see little yes, no buttons. And so yes, go ahead and do the videos, or no, let's go ahead and do it next time. Perfect. Okay, so let's do it next time. And so we'll add that on to our activities. So the very last thing that we'll do is one final poll. So for this last poll, I'll put it up on the screen as far as, was this helpful? Was it beneficial? While you're doing that, the other final piece of feedback that would be helpful is as we continue doing this, so next time we won't just be looking at Screencastify, but we'll look at a couple of ways to be able to record videos, whether it be you, the screen, or just audio for your students. But you know, as you're starting to think about this throughout the summer, think about what are some other things that you would like to learn how to do, whether it be particular tools, you know, like you want to the Google or you want the Screencastify, or whether it's just, I want to know how to create a hyperlinked document I can send out, or I want to know how to record a video. You can put those in the chat box today, or as you're thinking about it, you can always reach out via email and let me know. But that is all of our content for today. I appreciate you taking the time to hang out with us today. If you have any more questions, I'll stick around. I have time to stick around after this, so you're free to stay on and ask any questions you might have. But for those who may need to hop off to other things, have a great rest of your Thursday, and we will see you on June 25th.